Alright, today I want to talk to you about adding oil to your air conditioning system. Now, before we get started and get a whole bunch of hateful comments, this is not some sort of routine thing where you don't have to add oil all the time. It's not a periodic thing or whatever. There's basically only a couple times that you're going to need to add oil. Number one, if you replace any kind of component in your AC system, you've probably lost oil. There's charts you can find that say how many ounces you should do if you're changing your compressor versus your accumulator, etc. The other time would be if you've had any kind of leak of your refrigerant. A lot of times some of the oil will sneak out. Now, I know that sounds contradictory to when you vacuum the system and evacuate the refrigerant, supposedly the oil remains. So I'll leave it up to you to decide for your vehicle whether or not you lose oil if you lose any refrigerant. That being said, you want to find the correct oil. For the Crown Victoria is PAG 46. Very possibly every R134A vehicle uses PAG 46. However, it is up to you to look through the specs and see which oil your vehicle uses, because if you use the wrong oil, you will have problems. Now, your vehicle should have a sticker under the hood that looks something like this. It'll tell you what kind of refrigerant you use, how much refrigerant it holds, and then the type of oil. However, what you're going to find with most of them, they're not going to tell you here that it's PAG 46 or PAG 100 or PAG 150. They give you a weird part number like that, and you're going to have to cross-reference it. They will at least tell you the capacity. So this vehicle uses 27 ounces of refrigerant, 7 ounces of oil. Understand about oil, if you don't have enough oil, you will have problems. If you put too much oil, you will have problems. The problems from too much oil are far less than the problems you'll have with too little. Too little, you'll have seals that leak, your compressor will give out, and you'll have potentially majorly expensive issues. Too much oil, likely just less efficient cooling. That being said, I do not recommend that you just dump oil. Put a little bit of oil in if you lose some. Like I said, most of your repairs will tell you if you have, a compressor replacement, add 2 ounces of oil or 3 ounces of oil or 5 ounces, whatever it says, and stick with that. If you're unsure, then it's probably a good idea to only add 1 ounce, 2 ounces, 3 ounces, again, depending on the size of the system and the full capacity. For example, the Crown Vic with 7 ounce capacity, you probably don't ever want to add more than 4 ounces at one time and kind of see how it's going. That would be kind of your maximum. So this can is a 3 ounce can. However, it's 2 ounces of oil and 1 ounce of refrigerant, so you need to keep that in mind. This is pure oil. They add to the system differently. This one is going to require you to have gauges or similar. You basically hook this up, hook that up to your yellow line, make sure it's nice and tight before you open the can. Connect the blue to your low pressure. Honestly, there's almost never a time where you need to even hook up the high pressure line. Just keep it fully closed. It's really limited usage for most situations. You can get plenty of information off of the low pressure side. Start the vehicle, run the vehicle, and then open up the can, allowing the oil to flow in. Open up your low pressure valve, allow it to flow. I think it says to kind of shake it and turn it and so forth. And if you are smart, you'll weigh this with a scale before you start, and then you can see how many ounces have come out. Like I said, since it's 2 ounces of oil and 1 ounce of refrigerant, you won't know exactly how much is in, but you can kind of guesstimate. If you lose 2 ounces out of the can, it's probably like 1.25 ounces to 1.5 ounces of oil and the rest refrigerant. The nice thing about this one, you can be very precise with your measurements. You probably need a tool that looks something like this. The cool thing about this, you have measurements along here. So for example, if you wanted to add a 1/2 ounce, you just spin this until it says 1/2 ounce. Open the top, pour in your 1/2 ounce oil, tighten it all the way. Obviously I'm not doing it on here, but it needs to be tight. Then I would recommend actually removing this fitting at the end and giving this a few turns until oil comes out here. Make sure there's no air in here, because you do not want to add air to your system. Once it's oil, put this back on. This connects to your low side, and start the car, full air conditioning, the same as the other system. Except with this one, connect it, and then you're just going to turn it as you go, and it's going to force the oil down into the system. And as long as the compressor's running, it will pull the oil in and do what you need to do. So there you go. 2 methods of doing it: oil and an injector, or you can get a little refrigerant type can and use your gauges. Either way will get the oil in your system. Like I said, it's generally better to have a teeny bit too much oil than it is to not have enough. However, it is nearly impossible to know how much oil you have, so you don't want to just haphazardly add oil. Like I said, 1 ounce or 2 maybe at a time, and see if you start having improved performance or decline of performance in your system, and use that as your baseline. I probably would never add more than half capacity plus 1 ounce or 2, unless you absolutely knew for sure that you had 0 oil in your system to start with. But that's going to be a rare situation. Most of the time it's going to be you had a small leak, maybe you replaced one component and now you're adding oil. That's it. Let me know if you got questions in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright, with the engine off, you see I've got the low pressure connected. I do not have the high pressure connected to anything. My gauge is there. High pressure side's closed, low pressure side is closed. Yellow is not hooked up to anything currently. I'm going to start the vehicle, turn the air conditioner on, full blast, max, recirculating the whole 9 yards. And then we'll hook up our oil and we'll add some oil. You see the low pressure side is running in the 30s. High pressure is not hooked up to anything. Pure there. We will open the can. Have a vent up here, which would be nice. In order to make sure we don't add air, I gotta open this until we see some gas come out. You can hear the gas coming out of there, but so you never want to add air to your system. So now we will open up the low pressure side. Liquid to flow to the upside down, gas this way, and kind of shake it back and forth. You can watch in the glass there, you can see when the liquid's in there, and it'll be pulled into the system. So you can see the liquid in there, and then it will go up and down as it pulls it out of the can and pulls it into the system. You just want to watch your pressure there. Make sure your pressure doesn't exceed what it's supposed to be. And again, that's going to be dependent on the heat and humidity. So right now, probably 50, 55 would be too much. So I'm actually a little bit low. And I'm basing that on it being over 100 and probably 50 to 60% humidity right now. Generally, you'll put a temperature gauge in one of the center vents. There's charts you can look up on the internet, see what it should be based on the ambient temperature. I use the old-fashioned method. Just put your hand in front of the duct, feel that ice cold air blowing out, and know that you're doing a good job. So like I said, I suspect mine may have been low on the oil. Adding 2 ounces certainly isn't going to hurt it, so that's what I did. And it seems to be a good decision, because like I said, it's blowing ice cold, and it gives me some peace of mind. When that glass is clear of liquid, I'll shut it off. Start by shutting off that valve. Turn off the car, disconnect from there, and then shut this off or disconnect this. I've let this can go empty, so I'll be able to totally remove that valve, but if you didn't let it go empty, then you'd have to shut it and keep it sealed. You can see the liquid has been pulled into the system, so we're ready to shut down. Start by closing that valve all the way. This one's remained closed the whole time. I'd say this one almost never needs to be used, to be honest. And just to be safe, I'll go ahead and close this. This has one of those resealing on the inside caps, so that will be sealed. Pull this. Make sure you replace your cap. The Schrader valves inside these tend to wear out and leak. That's where I had my leak. Alright, I'm going to show you the oil injection method. I am assuming that the top line is 1/4 ounce, even though it says 1/4 below it, because it wouldn't make much sense that that whole space there would be nothing. So I'm assuming, since I'm at the second line, that this is a 1/2 ounce. Just eyeballing it, I would think that's a 1/2 ounce. So I'm gonna pour that in there, and then thread this on nice and tight. All right, that should be tightly sealed. Now I'm going to see, we need to get the air out of here because you don't want to press air in. I'm going to see if we just turn this, if it will pump through there, or if I need to take off the fitting. There we go. So we should, yeah, now there's oil coming out of there. So that's what I wanted to see. So now I should have oil as far in as I can possibly force it. And so you can hear this is a little bit leaky, so at some point I'm going to have to replace it. Apparently it needs the adapter on it.